Alright, you guys, welcome back to Hello Lady. This is going to be the final episode of the story. We are finishing the true route today. Very exciting. Let's get into it. Hishia drove a van through the closed gate. Both the sky and earth were already burning red. It was no doubt in a state of emergency.
とっくにパーリータイムのようです。ハイかぶり姫としてはいかがなさりますか？
気は長い方じゃないの。王子様のところまで最短距離。
Like, this is like the best for me. I love that they're like kind of friends now. Like, just a little bit.
一直線に参ります。
Hishia intensely moved the handle. Bearing the sentry gun attacks with the van's reinforced frame, she headed straight into the entrance of the hallway leading to the inner garden. The tires gave in under the gunfire, causing the vehicle to slip and fall onto its side, but as it did, it went right into the building. Rory casually tore out the door to the passenger seat and casually stepped out of the vehicle.
ちょっと乱暴すぎない？
Says the flashiest person here.
派手なのは成田様の仕込みですので。それでは瑠璃様、ヒシアには行くべきところがありますので、あとはお好きに。
No. Don't let Rory do as she likes. We know how that went before, okay? Hishia used her free hand to give Rory a perfect bow whilst holding a bunch of armaments so dense that it looked like a metal hedgehog.
お兄様のところ。
手間のかかるご主人様です。ヒシアがいないと飛行機に乗るのも一苦労ですので。
There's a lot of things he's gonna do without us.
私は先に用事を済ませてから行くわ。お兄様によろしくと伝えておいて。それからここまで運んでくれて。
おやおや、これは珍しいものをいただきました。
そうだわ。一番近い海はどっちかしら。
Rory asked as though she just remembered something.
ですか。ここは奥島です。最寄りは東に5キロも行けば。海へ行きたいのですか？
いいえ、ちっとも。まあ、見たことないからちょっぴりは。
Gosh, Rory's situation reminds me of just Attack on Titan, where they've been trapped in these walls all this time and they just want to get out and go see the sea that they read about. Looking away, she didn't care. She threw a glance to what she thought was east.
ほう、素直でないあたりが嫌というほど呪われた血のつながりを感じさせて。いえ、それでは瑠璃様、ご縁がありましたらまた。
Rory casually walked into the hallway ahead, paying no heed to the maid running off with weapons on her.
まずは夜店時の。
Her chest ached. She didn't know if this was a proper pain. Even so, Rory Mikado knew nothing but to move ahead.
帝瑠璃は唯一の新作。そう。
I really hope, like, she becomes humbled even more so than she already is. Because she's still a little bit humble, right? She's definitely improved since Saku's route, but she could go a little bit more. Like, a lot more. The outside noises became distant, making the empty hallway become as silent as riplets. The lights were out, and the only moonlight leaking in could lead her, but that was no problem for her. And in the darkness ahead, a fan was closed.
お前。
Side profile of the person who closed the fan was, in a way, more familiar to Rory than her own brother. Is it Soraka? Oh, never mind. It was the fake that she used for her pleasure while she was locked up. To her, this was the closest person in the academy. The fake created using nanomachines created from Rory. Her name was Sakura Tanashi. Ooh, dang, she looks pretty out of it too. Saku whispered something that Rory didn't catch, and honestly she didn't care what she said, even if it was resentment or complaints made vocal. Rory was only irritated that she was standing in her way.
そう。使われたのが腹立たしいのね。復讐戦。いいわ。 むしゃくしゃしていたところなのよ。
Oh, frick, Saku's just going for it. She's pissed. She ain't got no time to waste on your games.
Speak what we think, not what we ought to say. The oldest has grown most with the tiger. Shall never see so much. Live so long, taking this sleep. Down.
All right, this is what I like to see. Let's go. Blue lightning spread out before Ruri could finish. With Saku in the center, the pale electric flowers filled the hallway.
あんたには山ほど借りがある。今から全部残らず、のしつけて返す。
All of them carried the power of small lightings, yet they couldn't reach Ruri.
復讐だ、借りを返すだと、どいつもこいつも。大義といい、お兄様といい、お前といい。
Yeah, that's just how humans are, Ruri. You know, it's hard to let things go. Her nerves were touched, and she stood up, irritated. She felt an explosive urge towards the hopeless fake, and there was no one who would teach her what it was. The thing that she believed was it turned out to be completely different. So not even she could understand the nature of the heat driving her.
言っておくけど、私が戦う理由は復讐でも報復でもないわ。
Saku instantly cut down Ruri's frustration.
私はインシグニア、クラウンの筆頭。その責任をなすべきことをなす。
I will dismantle you, little
あん
girl.
たはこの先には行かせない。解体してやるわ、小娘。
Dang, those are fighting words.
あ、そう。大きければいいってものじゃないって思い知らせてあげる。劣化コピー。
Let's freaking go. The moment I entered the school building, I was instantly attacked. Oh gosh, it's those stupid shark head robots. Something straight out of Spy Kids. The power was out, but the extremely strict security system was still active. Oh gosh, that's blinding. Gunfire danced, cannons sang. 12.7mm machine guns were far beyond carried weapons. They could turn even ferro-concrete walls and pillars into piles of rubble in but a few seconds. Two automatons with sharp shark-like heads and mechanical spider-like silhouettes appeared from the shadow of the pillar. The sound of the destruction made it seem like the atmosphere was being pounded with a hammer. A single bullet hole was opened in the mechanical beast, now immobile. The anti-material rifle shot made the automaton power down, and a few seconds later, the other suffered the same fate.
君にしては憎い登場だな。
完璧なメイドは己の出番というものを心得ているものですので。
You know, and Hishia is the perfect maid. Hishia came up the stairs, and anti-material rifle in hand, before giving me another of her perfect bows. I feel like some of that's a little bit mistranslated there. I hadn't expected her to come, or more like it seemed like something unplanned had happened. There was something I had to do before confirming them.
夜店時の聞こえているだろう。
こういった形で再会するとは思わなかったぞ。成田真理。
Hey, come out here and fight me, Tokino. Fight me right now. Though the still online remains of the automaton, I heard the voice of my enemy.
何を考えている魔女。人類に新たな光を与えると豪語したお前たちの実験は、よって立つ世界を終わらせようとしている。いや。
Yeah, your whole experiment or whatever you did ended up making my screen shake.
今から行くぞ。そう。この国風に言うのであれば、首を洗っているがいい。
Does Japan really say that? I've never heard that before.
帝の復讐か。人間らしいが、 何者も生み出さない愚かな行為だ。憎悪を捨てられぬ弱さが、合衆を切り捨てられぬ堅くなさが世界を乱している。あまたの戦場を歩いてきたというお前は幾度となくその愚かさを見てきたのだろう。どうしてそんな愚行を自らが続けられる？
Because we're stubborn, okay? Everyone in our family is stubborn.
それが人間だからだ。お前たちを許せないという怒り、銃口を向ける憎悪、それを愚かと涙する知恵も許そうとする慈悲も全てお前たちが愚かさと呼ぶ反問こそ命の姿だ。ただ美しいだけの形を人間と呼べはしない。だからこそ私の怒りはお前たちをシステムの全てを否定する。
Yeah, screw the system. Let's go, Narita.
それを愚かと知りながら挑むのか。お前こそ人間の醜さそのものだ。
お前たちは怯えただけだ。世界の醜さに、そのあり方に。夜店時の、私は怒りを恐れない。憎しみを恐れない。それを超えることを恐れない。だから私はここへ来たのだ。
私を殺して実験を、この意志を止めようというのか？
実験は止めるが、今の私にとってお前の命はついでだよ。私は兄として最後になしてやるべきことをなす。お前と話すのはおそらく最後になるだろう。だから正直に言おう。何もかも奪い、踏みにじって恥じることがない。お前の言う通り、世界の無慈悲を、人の愚かさを、私は数えきれないほど目にしてきた。
Yeah, I mean, Narita does know pretty well firsthand how unfair the world is. I mean, not just from, like, having his family, like, murdered, but he's gone around in these different places and seen how war-stricken they are.
夜店時の、お前の怒りは理解できる。それでも、策がいた。争いの中で、敵たる私に手を伸ばそうとした。空子がいた。自分の命を懸けて、この愚かな男、ミトリが、玉尾が、エルがいた。彼女らと同じように輝けるものを抱いた者たちと世界中で出会えた。見ず知らずの老人を救おうと銃口に立ち向かった少年がいた。虐殺の中、敵の子供を床下に隠して守ろうとした老婦人がいた。妻を殺されながら敵を許そうとした男がいた。彼らのある者は死んだ。ある者は敗れてうずくまった。傷つき生き延びた。それが一握りだろうと、悲劇に、無道に、偽りに、この世界の理不尽に飲まれても、人間であることをやめず、声を上げた勇気ある彼らがいる。
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you have, like, these big world tragedies and everyone's, like, grieving, right? Like, that's actually when humanity is at some of its best points, too. Because obviously you have, let's just use, like, I don't know if I don't use an example, but you have all these points where there's, like, some tragedy that happens, like a natural disaster or humans just attacking each other. But then you always have a bunch of people gather together and unite, and they give of themselves to others to help them get through this hard time. Like, you actually see, like, you know, obviously some of the worst, but you see some of the best in humanity too.
この世界を救う理由としては、それで十分すぎる。システムよ。お前たちは今、私の敵になった。
どこまでも暗愚だ。しかし、遅かったな。
Okay, to be fair, the system is kind of crazy. There's a lot to it. Like, we knew about some of it, but there's just so much more to it. Naruto ran up to the window showing the inner garden, not because Tokino told him to, but because he felt a powerful shockwave coming from there. Two stars were running on the surface like meteorites or lightning strikes. They easily flew faster than hundreds of kilometers per hour. Spreading flowers of destruction all around, they tore a straight line on the surface. The ones clashing were destruction given human form.
あれはルリ、サクと戦っているのか。
The school building was burning and melting. The ground had craters all over it. The remains of roses created a blood-like rain, and the shockwaves reached even this building, which was hundreds of meters away.
人類という装置の次世代機 HMI の頂なりしリア王同士、現存する2つの衝突だ。空前にして絶後かもしれない最高の出し物だろう。
貴様の企てか、夜店時の。この後に及んで悪辣な魔女め。
You're as vile as ever, you witch.
心外だな。サクは自分から打って出た。あの子はそういう子だ。愛する母校と同胞を守るため、そして友の思いに応えるためにリア王ワンを打倒する。
Yeah, it's actually crazy that I'm like kind of sympathetic now towards Ruri because I absolutely was not like that before. And now it's like, oh no, I don't want her to die. I mean, if she's going to be a better person, yeah, I want her to live. I mean, I know how important she is to Narita, even though I think he is very obsessed with her sometimes, and I know how people disagree with me on that. Her tone was full of true love for her student. If Saku Otonashi was as I knew her, then Tokino was right. This is exactly what she would do. From what I could see, Saku and Ruri were opposed in many ways, including appearance, impression, nature, thought patterns, and means of fighting. Saku was creating various and vast energies while moving around at a lightning-fast speed. She was akin to a moving solar furnace. Natural phenomena like fire and wind, physical effects like light and electromagnetism, and even concepts that strayed from known laws like physical enhancement or momentum control. I knew the nature of Saku's halo from our last meeting in the heart of the underground facility, thanks to both our clash and the memory sharing. Saku could not only retrieve the halos of other HMIs and use them as hers, but also create new powers based on the information she acquired. All-powerful, that was the best term for her halo. Saku Otonashi's King Lear 3 had the power of creation.
時の先生のデータでも大概化け物だと思ったけど、ここまで来ると化け物の方が可愛げあるわね。ここに閉じ込められていた7年で夜店時のたちが一体何をしたと思う？どんな実験で私を試したのか。この程度の破壊、とっくに乗り越えているわ。
How many times has this happened now? Saku showered Ruri in flames like a vaporized tank, yet she came out of them completely unscathed. Even her white dress remained unstained.
私に好きに使われていたのが許せないのね。虫けらを殺して回ったのが我慢できないのでしょ。踊り狂う道化が好きよ。今夜の気分は最悪だから、うさばらしに潰してあげる。
Hey, Ruri, you're not supposed to kill my friends. You know better.
貴様らしくない失策だな、魔女。勝負は見えている。サクにはルリを倒す手段がない。
Technically she does.
スクールの最強を侮るなよ、復讐者。リア王ワンの凌駕は帝ルリの認識に左右される。炎を凌駕しても全ての炎への耐性を持つとは限らない。要はあれが同一の現象と認識できなければいいのさ。
So we need to change her perception on it, make it seem like it's so overwhelming that she can't go past it. That was the reason why Saku was still standing. She was sneaking past the eyes of the Transcendence by changing the sources, precisions, uses, wavelengths, and colors of the phenomena. However, that was easier said than done. This surely required immense amounts of precision and processing power. Even trying to do what Saku was insane.
成田様、白い方が勝つ。このままおとなし様が繕えなくなった雑巾みたいにケチョンケチョンにやられるのを黙って見ておられるのですか？
これはサクが自分で越えなければならないと決断した戦いだ。今や敵である成田森林には手を貸す義理も貸してよい道理もない。
侮るなと言ったぞ。おとなしさ到達した。
Gosh, I will say though, this is like such a different situation than anything we've ever been in. Like Saku's never really been our enemy, like ever. Like Saku's always been like a good friend and we've always tried to help her. Well, okay, you know, when she was controlled by Ruri, of course she was an enemy, but I mean, never of her own free will. So this is interesting that he's saying that, because obviously he cares about her still.
どういう意味だ。サクはクラウン唯一のリアを最初からスペリオルを持つ HMI のはず。
限界とは更新されるものだ。これまで限界と信じていたものを乗り越えることを成長という。
Freaking, I don't know. Apparently we're the fifth one, so I guess there's at least two.
この力が成長か。世界を終わらせかけてまで。
時代の先頭を走る者に危険はつきものだ。初めて海原へ漕ぎ出した者はきっと無謀な冒険者だったろう。
それだけの力をもってしても人は争うのだ。
Looking down, I saw Saku and Ruri still clashing in their deadly battle.
成と真理の言葉とは思えないな。人間の欲望には際限がない。無限の願いを叶えるには無限のリソースがいる。
Yeah, kind of, I guess.
だからこその実験。だからこそのリア王。お前も次世代の頂点なりし HMI の持つハロー。 人類の希望にリア王。大文豪があらゆる悲劇を束ねて勝ち切った大作の名を冠されている理由を知る。たどり着く先ではない。それは打ち破るべきものの名なのだ。
なんだと。
世界の悲劇を超えるありえざる力がリア王。すでにあるものを制御し再現するだけの万能では遠く及ばない。 さあ、目を凝らせ。あれが真の創造だ。
Dang, Tokino's getting a little worked up about this.
成田様
Though warping her tiny mouth in laughter, Ruri was clearly irritated. She was obviously above Saku, and she wasn't able to finish her off. Saku hounded her, but Ruri could do nothing. The instinct and focus coming from her natural talent and pride just weren't enough to do this. Put in simpler terms, she wasn't at her best.
口ばかり達者な姿はお兄様そっくりね。芸が終わりなら幕にするわよ。
I mean, your brother kind of beat you pretty bad. I mean, I don't know what you mean, all talk. Those words were more like a bluff than a challenge. In return, she received a direct glare that she didn't expect.
この程度が何だっていうの。勝ち目のない性能さ。逃げ場のない窮地がどうしたの？及ばないなんて、届かないなんて、いつものことよ。
Indeed, Saku Otonashi had faced worse despair. Deep in her memory, there was a deep wound. Back when she was a powerless girl, she faced a slider who killed her friend. The difference between humans and HMIs was as fundamental as that between lions and rabbits. The rabbits would be targeted, chased, face death, fear them, cry, and yet...
だから戦えるわよ。きっと、あんたのバカ兄貴もそうだったんでしょ？
Hey, why are you calling me stupid? I know we're enemies, but still. Thought we were friends.
どうしてここでお兄様の名前が出てくるの？緩んだ脳で横連舞でもしているのかしら？どうして私が？ふざけないでよ。最初に名前を出したのはあんたの方でしょ？
They're having a cat fight in the middle of their fight.
あんたを潰した後で、あの大バカ野郎にも一発思い知らせてやらなくちゃいけないってだけよ。
I don't know if you can stop Narita. He is pretty strong. I mean, he doesn't just have straight up power, but
お前が先に潰れてしまえ。醜いハエのように。
with fiery anger, she shook off the confusion in her chest. She kicked off the ground, creating a crater. She wouldn't know peace until she completely crushed the conceited woman and her stupid ideas. She easily broke through the heat that could turn her into vapor and approached Saku before swinging down a supersonic fist charged with hate. It was the same failure she'd done 2 days ago back at the church, as well as the moment Saku Tanashi was waiting for. I shouted that while watching Ruri and Saku's clash from afar. Ishe instantly used her automatic rifle. As the reinforced glass window was shattered, a wind carrying the smell of burning came in, turning my hair into a mess. I underestimated her. Saku actually had a means of defeating the monster that grew every single moment. Saku only challenged Ruri head-on and prolonged this battle because she was waiting for a chance to use this ace up her sleeve, which would be enough to defeat Ruri, even if it would be taxing in terms of processing power. I couldn't tolerate that. Even if it was Saku, I couldn't let anyone else have Ruri's life.
Sit!
Oh, she's powering up again.
The weight of this time, we must obey. The oldest has-born most. With that type, King
Okay.
Clear 3.
I am going to skip this just because we've seen her do this a few times, okay? I want to get into the action here. Oh gosh, we're back to freaking Saku's route again. Ruri screamed for the first time since the battle began. I mean, I would be kind of fine with her taking away Ruri's power. Like, Ruri's like not 100% good right now. I mean, she still just wants to kill some people, I think. You know, she needs to be humbled. That moment, Ruri saw flowers. Not one or two, countless flowers were blooming, turning this place of ruins into a dreamlike garden. She jumped back into a hopelessly pathetic manner. She was merely following her instincts, which were so sharp you could mistake them for foresight, but even so, she was too slow.
私を奪ったのね。
Her appearance didn't change, but Ruri's right arm was almost completely reset. It lost its power, speed, and toughness, making it like into a normal girl's arm. This filled her with a fiery rage. I can't be a normal girl. I need to be special. This was King Lear 3's true power. Halo's creation was but an extra. It was actually able to dismantle and create the human microcosm from its smallest parts.
奪ってきたのはあんたでしょ。帝瑠璃。その罪を見ろ。あがなう時が来たわよ。
Her hair dancing, Saku faced intense rage head-on. She kept her distance until now. Now the roles were reversed. Like a fighter on the stage, she stood before Ruri, devoid of any trickery. There was a fantastical garden spreading out around Saku. It looked like an eternal paradise, but to Ruri Mikita it was nothing but a hell.
私を怪我したな。
Roaring like an injured beast, she backed away because it was the optimal thing to do. Saku's King Lear 3 didn't just take halos, it was also capable of turning Ruri into a normal human. It didn't allow King Lear 1 to surpass anything, making it its greatest enemy. However, if she was able to avoid being fully recreated, Ruri should be able to surpass it eventually.
時間さえあればこんなもの。だって今私はなんて言った。
Ruri understood the meaning of what she just said, making her forget that she was mid-battle and stayed in place in astonishment. She tried to run away out of fear. She tried backing away for a moment because she couldn't win. She was doing the same things as that woman who could do nothing but live under the protection of the man who took everything away from her. It was all because of that moment when, after her defeat at the hands of her brother, she was saved by that foolish man. Back then, instead of marching on forward or wishing for her death, she was slightly glad that she was saved and survived, and that was her greatest defeat. It was unforgivable, it was shameful, and yet, the one at fault was no longer with them.
私は
She knew the taste of defeat and shame, making her feel something for her brother. Or for Taigi. It feels bad that he's dead, though. I mean, you know, as much as I didn't like Taigi at times, it would have been nice if they got together and, like, she actually became a somewhat decent human being. Not even she knew. The unbearable pain that she thought was gone came back, making her despair and say,
私は飛ぶ。どこまでも遠くまで。
were her wings cut? Was she in the mud? Was she made to kneel? The answer to those questions was a resounding no.
Sit!
Wearing the unmovable band of defeat, she roared. This woman she was facing, she was a fake made from her, and an imitation could never shine brighter than the real thing. That was why Ruri accepted her defeat. Losing to her brother filled her with chagrin, but as she was, she couldn't win against this fake. Surpassing alone wasn't enough to surpass this enemy.
That utmost reach, being born, most choice, forsaken, and most loved, despised.
An enemy, that was what Saku was. She had to be defeated and she could in turn be defeated herself. That was the meaning of the word enemy.
リア1
In this encounter with someone she considered an enemy made Ruri come to an answer she wouldn't be able to come to before. Surpass. Surpass, surpass. If you couldn't withstand, surpass.
私は超えるお前をお兄様を何もかも
She launched a bare right-hand attack, the slender hand that was powerless compared to what it was now, tearing apart the illusionary garden.
リア王3が消える消される一体何を
Saku couldn't understand what was happening. The garden surrounding Ruri's right hand was disappearing, bringing back the runes of reality. The power that could rewrite her was also waning. Oh dang, so Ruri can go a little bit further too, huh? Unlike Saku with her King Lear 3, she didn't analyze and dismantle it. It was more apt to say that Ruri was tearing apart the very concept of Saku's halo. This incomprehensible phenomenon came at a cost. A flower of blood bloomed. Ruri was bleeding from her lungs with a ghastly smile on her face. It was no ordinary internal wound. She was basically destroying herself.
痛い心臓が骨が何もかも痛くて死んでしまうわたった今まで夢でも見ていた気が世界はこんなに痛くて涙が出るくらい素敵だわ
Okay, Ruri, we know you're a masochist. We get it. Ruri's King Lear 1 would surpass even the deepest wounds. It was impossible for her body to be hurt, but using this new ability was too taxing and processing power that not even she could keep up. But that was what made this Ruri Mikudo's ace up the sleeve. Just like with Saku, the hardship, trial, and the existence of a strong enemy brought Ruri a greater height than even before.
なんて苦しい身も心も焦がす敗北という泥の味ああこんなにも愛おしい私は二度と負けないお前をぶちのめしてお兄様を倒す
Stopped by Ruri's right hand, Saku's halo could no longer reach her.
何なのそれどういう冗談土壇場で新しい力いい気になってるんじゃないわよ
That's funny. Protagonist, you know. Saku felt that touching Ruri's right hand, which dispersed even halos, would be her end. Despite that, she didn't back away. The palm was fatal, but due to the reset, the arm only had the physical strength of a normal human. There was an extreme imbalance in Ruri's body, causing her to lose precision. Regardless, Saku rushed towards it.
私が一人で立っていると思うな
Fearing meant death. Hesitation meant death. Feeling the touch of the Reaper, she rushed to this enemy, and if only barely, evaded her swipe attack. At the same time, she twisted her body and launched a kick. It was an all-out attack from an enhanced body. Ruri took it head-on, sending her flying over the ground like a pebble skipping on the water before she crashed into the remains of a school building. Sending the rebel away, Ruri slowly stood up. The immortal King Lear 1 that would normally feel nothing was tilting as though heavily damaged. The ghastly smile like a crescent moon was that of a demon rather than an angel.
今度はお腹やってくれたわね離れたところからだと消されてしまうから接触した瞬間にハローで作り変えたのか
ニトリは私を信じてくれただからこの手であんたがやってきたことの償いをさせてやる
Hey, there's some Japanese. Both were completely silent as they looked at each other. They didn't need words to know that the next attack would end it. Saku Otonashi couldn't tolerate Ruri for using her body to massacre many of her fellow HMIs just for fun. Ruri Mikudo simply couldn't tolerate Saku for soloing her and standing right before her.
あんたみたいなバカにつける薬はないってのよ
Well, okay. Saku ran with speed that made it seem like she was flying.
そんなもの欲しがっていないわよ
I wouldn't want any, even if there were. I like how there's always a little bit of humor in this fight with Ruri. It's very interesting. Ruri ran, speeding faster than a bullet, piercing through everything in her way. Their attacks reached each other's weak spots. What are they gonna do? Just take each other out? Her chest was pierced. Carrying the concept of transcendence, Ruri's right hand simply couldn't be stopped as it pierced through Saku like she was paper. Ruri, who was held in the academy made to surpass countless experiments, turned out to be stronger than Saku even with the bodily enhancement. Therefore, what decided this outcome was the absurdly simple difference in pure body ability. Simple, but definitive. Or definite. I don't know what it said. Ruri had been running as she slept for 7 years, and Saku Otonashi was unable to reach her even at this critical moment. The blink of an eye passed. Time flowed like cold mud, making her sense that death was near. As it approached, there was only one question in her mind.
そんな趣のないエンディングでは拍手の一つももらえまい。おとなしさく。
Narita. She opened her eyes to see the back of a man who shouldn't be there. Holding Ruri's right hand, Shin Narita arrived in a split second to disperse the vision of her death. The moment I made my move was iffy if I made it in time. I used my left hand to swing away Saku's arm and my right to twist Ruri and use her own speed to throw her. She crashed into the surface with speed that would kill a normal person at least 3 times, yet it didn't even buy time against Ruri.
女子会の邪魔をするなんてつくづく無粋なお兄様。
Yeah, Narita, don't you know girls just want to have fun, right? Just as expected, she recovered instantly. That was my second time facing this bomb with a lit fuse, or 3 if you included this encounter back at the heart of the underground facility. A phantom pain came from the lapis lazuli on my chest. Looking at my little sister made me feel that something was off.
その女は受け止めて実の妹の首は折る。不出来な兄もここに極まれり。でも出てきてくれたのはちょうどいいわ。私お兄様を倒したくて追いかけてきたの。
You know, Ruri, I thought you were improving a little bit because you were so nice to Hishia and you guys were getting along.
お前は本当にルリなのか。
I'm pretty sure that's her.
ミカドルリ以外の何に見えるというの。どこからでも気の済むまで好きなだけ。ごめんなさい。
That's a little weird. It's kind of almost sensual. Ruri Mikudo was different. She was nothing like the empty husk that she was when I last saw her 7 years ago, or the infallible angel she was after the reunion.
いつの間にスクールへとは言わん。元より私はお前を殺すためにここへ来た。
I've already almost done it once. I can do it again. Covering Saku, I'd yet to recover from the shock of almost dying. I faced a tempest like bloodlust coming
お
from
兄
Ruri.
様、今は私を殺せないのでしょ。実験とやらを止めてオールとの接続を断たないとこの世界ごと道連れ。尊大わがままゆいが独尊が心情のくせに随分とお優しいこと。
Honestly, screw the owl. I don't even know what's going on with that, to be honest. I've been very confused for part of this route, even though I really do like it. But I have no idea how the owl is supposed to play into all this. Indeed, I couldn't defeat Ruri at this moment. First and foremost, it was best for me to take Saku and run, but now that I had faced her, she wouldn't let me go that easily.
勝者と敗者ですもの。それぐらいのハンデはいただいておきましょう。
Those words shocked me like nothing else. Ruri, who hated defeat more than anything, admitted that she was defeated. I just couldn't believe that. At that moment, Ruri dashed. I slowed down time, making my perceived world almost grind to a halt. I evaded Ruri's right hand as she thrusted at me and grabbed her wrist once more. Once I touched her, the difference in our speeds vanished. At that moment, I felt like I was caught in a vortex.
この技は
Using the point I was grabbing as a fulcrum, she threw me. This was no doubt the technique I'd used against her to cause her to destroy herself. I lost my footing and my world flipped upside down as I was flung into the air. I couldn't even brace or retaliate. The precision and skill in this move surpassed even the originals. This wasn't an infallible angel or a fairy. There was no room for doubt anymore. It wasn't even an issue that she stole my technique. The deciding factor was the very fact that she relied on something other than her brute strength. Mid-air, I let go of her hand, cutting the contact and restoring the time difference. And with the slow time in a moment shorter than a blink of an eye, I said,
これがお前の戦いか。
Murray's right hand approached me in slow motion. I had no means of avoiding it in midair, but I wasn't afraid. A blade too tough was very frail. It could be broken with ease. The dreaming Peter Pan was strongest because he was coolest, and one day reality would catch up to him. This was a golden wound that was unavoidable exactly because she was infallible. Ruri Mikado had come to know defeat, filling up the greatest flaw that she needed to become complete. As a winner, she came to know defeat. Her wings were broken, yet she still flew. The girl went up the steps alone, yet not at the same time. A soul meant for flight and a prayer to look upwards created a proud but sad forefront of humanity.
お兄様
This time without flaw, Ray's right hand touched Shinri Narita's chest.
見事お前の勝ちだ。
Witnessing the final authentic masterpiece, I accepted the end of my 7-year journey. I mean, we better not die here. Yeah, Saku, come save us. We need help. Saku forgot that Ruri was here and tried to run up to him, but she forced herself to stop when the HMI senses felt something even greater than Ruri.
これは何か来る
Oh gosh, is it the owl? Is that what's going on? She glared, not at the enemy she defeated, but something far below. It began to move. Like a clockwork watch mechanism that's been there from the start began to move. Okushima alone had a population that easily surpassed 150,000. Many of them felt something and looked up at the night sky. It was out of sync with reality, making it hard to properly perceive. Spurred by a powerful uneasiness, they looked outside through the open windows to see only a familiar sky. They had to force themselves to believe that it was nothing. Oh gosh. It's a big alien thing. Only those with the right aptitude could see it, and HMIs were among them. Something far larger than the world flowed out from the ground and stood tall. To say it was large would be an understatement. It was 57 meters tall. The way it stood between the mountains made it look like a true giant. It's the colossal titan. For the mechanism known as the world, shape was a transient thing. It was merely reflecting the appearance of the apex, the creatures that reached a new level of complication by evolving the forefront and achieving the greatest possible prosperity. Waves of power spread across the sky, and thousands of people all over Okushima began fading for no apparent reason. I don't know, I will say, because they didn't really come up with a cool design for the owl, it just makes it seem like they threw this together very last minute. I don't know. In other places, countless people were looking up at the sky and praying like most pious of lambs. Whether it was early morning, noon, twilight, or late evening, in towns, bedrooms, ruins, deserts, mountains, on sea, in the sky, in orbit, on battlefields, and dreams, young or old men and women of all races doing things of all kinds looked up in a single direction. Some were fearful of this great being. Some were infuriated by this absurd end. Some were simply praying. Yeah, I don't want to freaking die to some giant white blob. It was both overwhelming and majestic at the same time. It was a defensive mechanism, and as such, it quickly took to doing what it had to. Like ripples, footsteps of destruction suddenly spread all across the world. Tokuno Yosei was in the underground facility, watching the result of the experiment through a monitor. Her expression seemed to be a mix of resignation and anger.
危険は承知だった。万全を図った。未知に挑むことこそ。
They should want all, uncover all, and never stop moving forward. If human nature was something intolerable, then mankind as a whole was a failure that should have never existed. Tokino couldn't see the giant of light. The many observation units she had were showing nothing but a vast emptiness. The goal of the contact experiment was to carve open and establish a path between the owl and the physical dimension. It was scarcely different from what fearless explorers did during the Age of Discovery. From the observed data, Tokino drew a certain conclusion. She realized that the use of pure halos of multiple types during an intense situation involving multiple powerful HMIs, like a fight to death, would open a path to the owl. That was why she led Saku and Ruri to fight each other, and Naruto's involvement was actually something she wanted. Oh, okay, interesting. So she needed them to be fighting. She needed them to draw enough power out.
触れてはならぬものがあるとでも言 いうのか。ならば人間はどうして知恵を手にした？
Probably not to summon giant white beings. The shelter was collapsing. The intense waves coming from below the academy made the entire underground facility collapse. In the final moment, someone called her. The line was still active.
最後の話し相手が貴様か。私もつくづくつきのな。この不完全な世界に人類の未来に輝きをもたらそうとした。進みすぎたがゆえの破滅でもまどろみの中の観測でもない道を探すことが
I don't know.
間違いだったとは言わせない。
Is anyone else still confused about what exactly this was supposed to accomplish anyways? Like you were just doing it to do it?
私はここまで託す相手が貴様とは最後まで吐き気がするな。
The vast volume of the underground structure collapsed, turning the place back into the fissure it once was. Oh, well, that's kind of an unfitting end for her. Despite the intense destruction going on all around, the Academy students were still within its grounds. That was why they were able to see it from up close. It happened while Tamao and Arrow was still fighting.
ダメだなこりゃ。
Oh yeah, I totally forgot this fight's still going on too. Tamao was a machine. She knew her specs better than anyone else, and she instantly knew that she stood no chance. Fighting against this was hopeless. The thing that slowly stood up from what was once the plant was far taller than the school building and the research facility. Seeing it made her grin. It was so large that it was hard to process it at a humanoid form.
なんですかあれは。伝説の巨人、まさか完成してたなんて。
敵の俺が言うのもなんだけど、やばい時にいい加減なデタラメ吹く癖直した方がいいぞ。
Hey, I mean, y'all were still friends. It just so happens that you have different interests right now.
どうやら自分たちが戦っている状況ではないようです。
Arrow canceled her halo and stuck out her right hand. The situation was still uncertain, and Tamao put on a wry grin, unlike the one before.
マジ切れだったくせに頭は冷えてるな。そういうことなら一時休戦で他にできることでも。
Tamao's like, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to lose again. It's like, honestly, who has Tamao beat in the game so far? Like, in the story, like, has she really, like, been better than anybody? Like, besides some, like, guards or whatever. The moment she took the hand for a shake...
おら
Did she betray her? Arrow reactivated her halo, hindering Tamao's movements, and before she knew it, Tamao was laid bare on the ground, and Arrow was sitting on her
この
chest.
体勢はマウントポジションといい、とある柔術家が日本に持ち込んだのですが、上から相手をコントロールすることで反撃を封殺することに特化しています。
Dang, she got you good.
お前語ったな。
もちの論ですが、それはそれ、これはこれ。派手な舞台はふさわしい役者に。L の持ち場はここ。最後くらいはやりたいことをしてみます。
Fair enough.
マジか。お前がやりたいこととか言い出すなんて。
I mean, she was told to, you know, live for herself.
ほらー、おらおらおらおらおらおら裏切り者は滅ぼすべし。慈悲はない。本当にありませんからね。
Is that a JoJo's reference? I had to say that.
俺をなめんな。オラオラオラオラ。
She's doing it back. Despite the situation, or perhaps because of it, Tamao played along with Arrow's rarely displayed preference. While the two of them had their meaningless battle, the footsteps of doom continued to echo. The Giant of Light walked. He looked slow, but it was actually surprisingly fast. Nothing stood to stop it, and it wouldn't matter if it did. The absurdly large footprints it left turned everything into bits of light that soon vanished. Regardless, it was built by humanity. If it was built by humanity or the stars. The giant sang, and the world, the entire planet, shook. Wonder what kind of music it's singing. The effect wasn't only physical, even the foundation, what could be called the soul of reality, was being shaken, dismantled, and returned to nothing. It was a song of demise without pain or cruelty. Touching it was akin to waking up from a dream. It was the trumpet sound of the end, promised to reach all that had life. The demise was unavoidable, yet someone stood to defy it once more.
ああ、やっと出てきてくれたわね。
In the middle of the academy, the area looked like it was carpet bombed. The multiple buildings in the garden that were standing only about an hour ago were now a mountain of rubble. Compared to the ending that would be given by the giant, this destruction was cruel and ugly, and the ones who caused it were standing at the top of the rubble. They were standing there to face the approaching
今日
giant.
という日をずっと待ちわびていたの。一日先週。実に気の長い話だったけれど、こうして面と迎えられて嬉しいわ。
So at the end of the day, we get saved by Ruri, the person who, at the same time, was also trying to kill us. Okay. The girl, as graceful as a work of art, made her hair, as beautiful as the droplets of the moon, dance in the wind. She was Ruri Mikado.
ずっと私を見つめていたわね。殿方に見られるのは女の誉れ。けれど、相手によりけり。見るだけで声もかけてこないめめしい輩になびく女なんているものですか。
To be fair, I don't think he has a mouth, though he does sing, so maybe. Ruri was always haughty and wild. The girl who prided herself as someone who had it all from the start didn't stop being akin to a despot, even after she learned of defeat, emotion, and reason. Even as the perfect product, King Lear I, Ruri, was less than a child before the giant of light. The difference between them was like the difference between a planet and a pebble. Despite what she was, even she had no chance. This was a fact, yet the golden child paid no heed. In her heart, there was the haughtiness akin to that of a man who shot down the sun with an arrow.
あんたの都合はどうでもいい。でも今あのでかいのを片付けないとスクールどころか地球丸ごと見せじまいなんでしょ。
Yay, everyone's uniting. This is what I wanted. That's how I know Narita is the one narrating this. With her voluptuous curves in full display, she, Sako Otanashi, threw her hair back and looked at the towering giant. The insignia of the crowns, as well as King Lear III, born from elements taken from Ruri. She was akin to her child, yet she was a success story that was able to reach the level of the original. Just like always, she never once enjoyed battles with killing involved. In fact, she always feared them. That meant that she was of surprisingly sound mind. She'd acquired powers that matched the golden child after she was born, and though she saw a lot and sullied her hands many times, Sako didn't stray from the path of fall like many other HMIs. Basically, she was able to remain relatable no matter how much abnormality she witnessed. She was sometimes overwhelmed by fear and anxiety, yet she had a heart that could overcome it all. That was Sako Otonashi's greatest strength, greater than any halo. And so...
出てくるはずのないものがこちらに出てきた。ならば簡単だ。追い返してやればいい。ここは貴様のような世間知らずがいる場所ではない。
So said the last one here, Shinu Narita. He faced his despair yet remained full of pride. I can see why people wouldn't like this ending, because this just seems like really out of left field. It's like, where does this owl thing come into play? I mean, I liked it better when it was just like this idea that the owl was like the chosen person by the Academy, you know, to lead them into humanity's future. Not like an actual like being that is apparently trying to destroy the world. The clash between the three was interrupted by the appearance of the giant. This situation was likely caused by Tokyo Yomase's experiment. It wouldn't be hard to believe that the witch arranged the battle between Sako and Ruri and even got Naruto involved just to call this. Was this result towering over them something to celebrate or an unexpected worst-case scenario? This wasn't something they cared about. Ruri Mikado was connected to the owl since birth, and the fact that something besides her existed within her disgusted her more than anything else. She would kill the owl. She didn't even think about if it was possible. She promised that to herself when she was young, and she didn't care about that anymore. This whimsical, or more like haphazard girl, had to focus on defeating Narita and Saku first. The best way to do that was to get rid of this giant first. For Sako Otonashi, things were simpler. wherever the giant was, it was a threat to the world. She would either politely ask it to leave or send it out by force. Yes, Owl, can you just, leave, you know? We were kind of in the middle of a fight, and you kind of interrupted it. You know, that's a little bit rude. So if you could just not, that'd be great. She would deal with Ruri and Narita afterwards. As for Shinri Narita, why was he even standing here alive and well? He had no way of repelling the power of Ruri's right hand. He'd sustained an attack that he couldn't even stop. Couldn't stop even with the stillness from his halo. He should have been dead. If you ignored that question, he was the same as ever. He'd lost the revenge he used as his purpose for living. There were no clouds over his eyes. Violent fate that rid people of their lives, light snuffed out by an abhorrent human nature. He simply couldn't tolerate that many tragedies of this world. That was why he stood to defy this demise. I really like this CG. Like, this is awesome. I love, like, seeing them all working together. Even though they're kind of all enemies. But, you know, it works. In this situation, their wills were one. They would bring down the giant. Before the giant of light, their powers were but specks of sand. It wouldn't even pay any heed to them and instead focus on the role given to it by the gears far greater than any. In the blink of an eye, the giant became large enough to cover their vision whole. Large though it was, its limbs moved at almost the speed of sound. Even when it seemed to be walking, its speed was 100 kilometers per hour.
大きな顔で私に指図なさらないでお兄様。だいたいどうしてまだ生きているのや
I don't know, because you didn't finish me off.
ら。
Well, let's leave that for
それ
later.
もこれもあってまあ、ここは私の遊び場よ。勝手ができると思わないで。さあ、ダンスを始めましょう。
Instead of just sitting around, Ruri rushed to begin the battle.
Fairest Causeria, the utmost wit, being born, most choice, forsaken, and most love, despised.
High above, the giant slightly twisted its body. Its size made it truly enormous. The abnormality of this thing made it hard to process it with normal human perception. Its movement seemed sluggish, yet it was actually moving at an amazing speed, swinging its arm to neutralize the space along with Ruri as though chasing off a fly. A moment later, the shining giant's arm became light and vanished. Though the arm seemed like a vague mass of particles, it was actually tougher than any material on Earth. Yet Ruri was able to pulverize the upper arm with a counter from her right hand. The nature of the power in Ruri's right hand was simple. It was the power to break through anything, and since anything she broke through and surpassed was deemed unnecessary, it would be disposed of. This selfish ability made it possible for her to get rid of anything she touched. The greatest destruction achieved by mankind was even able to fight against the fate of demise. This destructive power damaged not just the matter, but also the very concept of right arm. It wouldn't allow any regeneration or healing, yet the giant regained its shining arm in but a moment.
古い腕ではなく新しい腕というわけ。形という縛りなんてどうでもいいのね。
どっちがデタラメなのよ。
The sight almost made Saku speechless. The very fact that Ruri fought the giant head-on made it clear just how insane she was.
君の言いたいことはわかる。兄に似ず、かくも頭の悪い妹ですまない。
Unlike me.
本当に兄弟だわ、あなたたち。それはともかくとして、オールを破壊しても大丈夫なの？潰したところで、世界も道連れに心中とかになったら。
Well, it sounds like it's gonna take the world with or without it, so we might as well kill it.
あれはオールそのものではなく、異物を排除する機構のようなもの。いわば端末だ。問題はないだろう。おそらく、私の目的にもかなう。
Interesting. So that's not the owl itself. Okay.
まあ、黙って見ててもどうせ終わりよね。それなら、ダメだった時は笑ってごまかすしかないか。Set. The weight of this attack.
Okay, this is like the third time, so I'm skipping it, okay? Saku raised her left hand. Countless bright lights appeared, representing various physical phenomena. Three beams of light pierced the night. The electron spears penetrated the owl, creating holes in the shining giant, making it lose its shape and mass. Powerful as it was the target of two King Lears. While Ruri was shattering it with sheer power, Saku was dispersing it like mist.
よし、通じる。これならなんとかやれそう。こちらに引きずり出されて形を成している以上、ある程度はこっちのルールに縛られてるってことね。
Yeah, but who's to say it's not just going to keep regenerating? Destroying it seemed possible, but that was enough to assume that they could win this. And the giant quickly regained its former shape, crushing all hopes. There wasn't even a sign that it was attacked.
あれだけやって何のダメージも残ってないみたい。
I mean, can Narita just stop it from regenerating? I mean, that's kind of his King Lear, right?
海から流れ込む水と同じか。力の流入自体を止めない限り、吹き飛ばしたところで再現はない。そしてこちらはいずれ力尽きる。
根本を立たないとダメってこと？でもそんな弱点っぽいもの一体どこに？こんな時に時の先生がいてくれたら知恵を出してもらえたかもしれないのに。
Yeah, well, I hate to tell you, she died in a ditch.
ヒナはいつか巣立つもの。先人には敬意を払わねばならないが、現在を生きる若人の役目は足跡をなぞることではなく、超えて進むことだ。
That is very true.
頼らずにやれってことでしょ。成田はいつも話が回りくどいのよ。それで具体案は？
手立てがあるなら早く教えなさい、お兄様。
Ruri stopped fighting it head on and came back down. She must have realized that her efforts were fruitless. With the annoying insect gone, the giant resumed walking with its heavy steps.
あれは
With every step, the giant was becoming more brighter. At first, it was merely a bright humanoid shape, but now it was so dazzling that it was hard to look at. I instantly understood what that meant. As its brightness grew, so did the indiscriminate destruction inflicted upon the world.
時が経つほど危険極まりなくなるか。奥島ごと跡形もなく消し去られるまでさほど猶予はなさそうだ。
しかしあれの大元は判明している。システムの某女子が教えてくれた。接触実験はこの場所でなければ成立しなかった。
So it could only exist in Ogashima. Is that because there's a huge gathering of HMIs here?
それはスクールができる前にあったっていう大亀裂のこと？プラントがそれを塞ぐ形で建設されたとか聞かされたことがある。
Interesting. So it has to do with that fissure, huh?
昨夜の地震、震源地は地下40キロ。間違いなくそこだ。スクールの真下、大亀裂の最深部に得意点がある。
Yeah, that earthquake made my screen shake for the longest time.
巨人が来たのも下からだったわね。
ルリ、巨人の足止めを頼む。合図があったら倒せ。
あら、お兄様が私にお願い事なんて、これが初めてではないかしら。
Yeah, you brat, so just do it for me, okay? Ruri cracked a mischievous smile. The expression reminiscent of what she was 7 years ago made my chest ache, but I managed to hide it.
いいわ。兄弟のよしみですもの。でも、お兄様こそ失敗なさったら、一族老頭を笑い物にして差し上げる。
Well, it's a good thing they're all dead then.
鏡でも眺めながら笑い転げるがいい。もっともその時にまだこの世界が残っていればだが。
Oh, that's a good one.
地下40キロの得意点なんてどうやって手出しするつもりなの？成田が言ってる間。
サク、君の仕事は別にある。
I suddenly embraced her waist and pulled her to me. Whoa, okay. It was so unexpected for her that she momentarily forgot the situation we were in and became flustered in more ways than one.
ちょっとこんな時に、あ、いえ、
Maybe
こん
it
な時
is.
だからかもだけど、ちょっと成田、正気に帰って。
Dang, Saku's trying to get down with it.
任せたぞ、ルリ。
お兄様。
Holding on to Saku as she yelped, it began running. I ran towards the place where the giant first appeared. The being, that being the fissure that was exposed when the planet collapsed. Oh boy, it's just getting crazier and crazier. Dang, they're really busting out all the CGs now. I love it. Holding Saku, Naruto threw himself into the emptiness below with almost nothing on him. Looking like a scabbed wound, the giant fissure was akin to a hollow leading to hell. Though it was mere 80 meters long and 37 meters wide at most, it was a shaft that reached all the way down to 40 kilometers. Having suffered the destructive hands of the giant, the sides were smooth as butter, making it almost look artificial. They were both falling into this fissure. You know, that's just the Naruto style. Saku wasn't even able to finish her sentence, even keeping her eyes open was a challenge with the wind hitting her face. The ever-increasing speed of the fall made it hard to stay sane. The sensation of gravity pulling her made her feel like her heart would burst out of her chest. If Naruto truly believed that they could safely arrive at the bottom of 40 kilometers down with such an absurd method, he should have had his skull opened and checked for the presence of a brain. As Saku noted to do just that if they made it back alive, the air pressure suddenly vanished. She fearfully opened her eyes and realized that they were floating as though gravity had vanished.
残念ながら止まってはいないよ。時間減速。我々は50倍の速度で動いている。
Oh, okay. This was a world in slow motion where everything but they were sluggish.
成田のハロなの？
その先にあったものだ。万象を止める絶対の静止。変化を拒絶し、全身を否定する忌むべき呪われた力。
成田、それは。
Naruto showed gloom that was unlike him, but before Saku could express her worry, she was cut
今
off.
は時間こそ貴重だ。瑠璃であってもそう長く巨人を足止めできまい。我々は1秒でも早く得意点へたどり着かなければならない。
たどり着かなければって40キロ先よ。まさかこのまま落ちていこうとか思ってるんじゃないわよね。
Objects falling through the atmosphere at a limit called terminal velocity, the balance between the air resistance and gravity. Even in the optimal conditions where the fall was completely direct, getting to the bottom of this fissure would take about 600 seconds. That was enough time for the owl to eliminate Ruri and end the world. Oh, okay.
君の力を貸してくれ。何よりも週末よりも早く。
私たちを加速しろっていうの。
Saku's King Lear 3 allowed her to accelerate their mass to about 10 meters per second. That didn't seem like much, but with time slowed down as it was, their objective speed would be over 10 times greater than that, bringing them down this dark hell in no time. A single mistake like a graze with the wall would make them blow up into pieces. Oh, lovely. And there was no guarantee that this fissure even reached the bottom.
先に取りなさいよ。
You know, let's just do it.
任せておきたまえ。
Saku put her hands over the man holding her and clung tight. Ooh, we're glowing. Multiple halos were activated at the same time. Embraced by pale plasma, the two began falling at an absurd speed. They were akin to a falling star that sliced the darkness apart. Saku's processing powers surpassed the limit during her battle against Ruri. She was having a hard time merely accelerating them. She couldn't even create a space for momentum control to protect them. It must have meant that the reason why they almost weren't feeling any air resistance was Naruto's halo.
成田って本当にバカだわ。
Thrilled despite the situation, she shouted that at the idiot next to her.
まったくしつこい殿方ね。
The fight between the giant and the girl was still ongoing. A shining hand reached, covering the sky above. It was as tough as a mountain was falling towards her. Knowing that she couldn't escape, Ruri opted to punch it away with her right hand. It shattered the giant's hand, which restored itself in about a couple seconds. This happened so many times that she stopped counting. Eventually, Ruri was being overwhelmed. Her movements began to lose their brilliance. It wasn't fatigue from coming to know her powerlessness, she was actually wounded. Again, Ruri Mikudo, the one with the Halo of Transcendence, surpassing, which could overcome all and any pain and injury, making her nigh immortal, was actually injured. Failing to evade the giant's earth-rending swipe, the girl was blown away. Normally Ruri would surpass attacks she suffered. She suffered one, making her immune to them. However, this function didn't work on the giant's attacks. Though her body didn't disappear, it hurt and took 10 times as long to recover, making even mere broken bones an injury that needed time to heal. King Lear was actually working as normal. The problem here was merely that the giant was so far above Rui that even surpassing his attacks wasn't enough. You couldn't leap over Mount Everest by simply jumping off the ground. The giant was like the world itself, surpassing it would take thousands of moons.
せっかくお兄様が頭を下げたのだもの。結果は出して差し上げないとね。
Oh, that's kind of cute. She's like trying to, impress her brother, even in the end. After Ruri fell, the giant launched a follow-up attack, but she deflected it and charged it at it once more. As unbeatable as it seemed to be, the giant needed time to recover from her attacks. It had openings she could use, and now she was using them to approach it. A single swing took out the giant's left foot and shin. Subjected to gravity, the giant seemingly slowly, but actually quickly began collapsing. Ruri was waiting for it at the surface, aiming for its head.
試行錯誤は人間の美点。手や足を消したところで意味がないなら、別の急所で試してみましょう。
As it collapsed, the giant began to shine bright. The pale light began to spread like the filling moon. With a sound, both natural and artificial objects began to shatter and turn into bits of lights. Dang, this thing's crazy. It's so big, and it's like, just regenerates so fast. Rui was no exception. They dived straight down as they were no longer falling. The world became like molten ink and was left behind, repeatedly doing slight changes of direction as though threading the needle. Narita and Saku were heading to the bottom. Even Saku's vast processing power wasn't enough for the intense calculations. Her nerves were short-circuiting, and her brain was so hot it felt like it was on fire. The faces of people she met until now held her bursting consciousness together. Mitori, Soriko, Tamao, Eru, friends that could never be replaced. Her mother, who encouraged her to go to the academy, and her father, who saw her off with tears in his eyes. Her friend, who was gone for good. There were things she had lost. She was hurt in more ways than one and had her share of sins. It's very fitting that, in the end, it's Narita and Saku. She shouted as loud as she could, barring her emotions. She didn't want to save the world. That was simply beyond her. She only wanted to meet them again, hopefully with a smile on her face. Perhaps the afternoon tea parties that they had together didn't suit her, but she loved them more than anything else.
怖いけどこの先へ進めるわ。
私は本当は心の底であの地上の世界を憎んでいたのかもしれない。
The man who never once lost his pride rang out a heavy confession. It pierced Saku's heart.
君のその輝きを忘れるな。
私の
本当のノーブルとは導くものではないと私は思う。それは夜の果てに昇る黎明、遠く瞬くかすかな光。世界とはこの闇と同じ、どこまでも続く無明そのもの。命という輝きが無人の暗闇に束の間の意匠を描き出す。人生とは一瞬の流星、流れて燃え尽きる本来何の意味もない幻。
Funny you talk about falling stars. It's kind of what we are right now.
形あるものはついえる。すべては終わりへとして走る。人が天を目指して築く塔は道半ばに崩れ落ちるのが宿命だ。それでも命が無意味だろうと、その歩みにはきっと価値がある。
私本当に何かができたのかな。いつも大事なものは守り損ねてしまうのに。
胸を張りたまえ。君の手がどれほど罪深くてもためらうことなく飛べ。ノーブルとは目指すべき灯火だ。鳥に見せられた者が翼に挑み、星に心奪われた者が空を目指す。世界の正しさを一個だにしない輝ける愚か者たちの背中が後に続く誰かの夢になる。
Saku's hesitation was dispersed, and she gave him a nod. Their senses as HMIs felt what was in the darkness ahead. It was a path leading to the core of a distant world, a singularity that was pulsing here in the underground since eternity.
あれを破壊すれば巨人を倒せるのよね。でもどうやって？
I have no idea. This ending is incredibly ambitious. I will say that. I don't know if I like the overall premise of the ending, but I do like the execution of it. I think it's pretty cool.
それは
A moment later, as they still accelerated downwards, an immense shining mass fell from above. The giant was falling at an unbelievable speed. Impossible. At slowed down time, to outside observers, our speed should have been over 10 times the speed of sound. Even if the giant jumped into the fissure after us, it simply shouldn't have been able to catch up with us.
振り切れない。
トゥリはどうした？巨人が我々を追いかけてきたのなら
Falling right behind us at the same speed as us, the shining giant reached for us. We should have been experiencing 50 times more time than the giant, but it was as fast as
時
before.
間減速の影響を書き換えられているのか。どちらにせよあれは正真正銘の化け物だ。サク、なんとか加速しろ。捕まればひとたまりもないぞ。
Oh gosh, we're already going so
これ
fast.
以上の加速は？
We failed to dodge. The giant's thumb grazed Saku's body. It was as light as a feather's touch, but the mere difference in mass made her fly like a bowling pin.
サク！
If she flies on the side, isn't she gonna explode? The shock canceled my time distortion, making the world move as it had been. Saku was blown out of my arms and ended up 10 meters below me. She was our engine, and without her accelerating and controlling my position was nearly impossible. Falling. I was doing nothing with falling. I lost my mobility and free fell. Below there were several dozen kilometers of darkness, and above there was a giant of light shining like the moon. Trying to forcefully fix my posture, I followed Saku with my eyes. She was still conscious, but having overused her processing power, she couldn't use her halo, letting her do nothing but fall.
逃げろ！サク！
I shouted as hard as I could, knowing full well how absurd I was being. The giant fixed its pupilless and motionless eyes on Saku. Its shining right hand clearly moved to attack her. The giant palm fell like a guillotine. It was too fast to catch up to and couldn't be stopped. It looked like the hand of fate would finally take her. And so, the white bright arm was shattered into pieces before it could reach her. Back on the surface, the giant had kicked off Ruri and jumped into the fissure. He was clearly going after the two who went to the singularity. It might have been an act of self-defense as a device, or a kind of instinct. Regardless, it knew that Nari sent Saku with a poisoned dagger. Ruri was standing atop the head of the giant, which covered the space above us like a canopy. There was a ghastly, haughty, and proud smile on her face. Despite her expression, she was wounded all over. You would have an easier time counting where she wasn't hurt than where she was. Her limbs had lost their original shapes. They were more like crimson sticks. When Ruri had clung to the giant after it jumped into the fissure, about half of her body was gone. She abused her power of transcendence to the point that she almost destroyed herself, but in the short fall, she couldn't recover to more than this.
どうして私を？
Gosh, man, they're still going. Like, they're still making this crazier.
物事は順番よ。この大きいのを片付けたら次はお前、それからお兄様。
Like, I apologize, I haven't been saying more. I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on. I'm just like reading. I'm just trying to like process it all, you know? You know how they have like to process so much with their halos? Like, I feel like I'm just trying to use the halo of understanding what's going on in the novel. Because it's just like, oh, crazy. They couldn't hear each other. The intense wind from the fall made it impossible for sound to travel.
お前ともずいぶん長く一緒にいたけれど、そろそろお別れしましょう。付きまとう殿方は好きではないの。
I don't know, you kind of followed him, but okay.
私はもっと先へ行くわ。お前よりもずっと先へ。
She raised her right hand, but before she swung it down, she froze. She then tilted her head as though she remembered
一
something.
番最初にそう思ったのはいつだったかしら。あれは確か、ああ、そう、あの女。思い出してみればつまらない子守。
Saku saw Ruri smile. It wasn't the grin of someone who thought they owned the world. It was a beautiful faint expression reminiscent of white snow that would melt in an instant.
任せるわお兄様。しくじったら承知しないわよ。
Oh, is she gonna sacrifice herself?
ちょっと待ちなさい。何を勝手な真似を。
I mean, Ruri was kind of trying to kill us, so I'm okay if she wants to sacrifice herself. She did make a little bit of progress as a human being. Just a little bit. Ruri swung her hand down. Her power spread from the giant's head to its entire body. That white outline lost its shape and blew apart, creating countless bits of light that flowed like a meteor shower. In the bright shower, Saku saw a white feather-like dress, making her forget her limits and use her halo. She used her remaining energy to cancel out her falling speed and rise into the stardust sea left behind by the giant. I went down with my back facing the 2 dazzling girls rising above. Letting gravity take me, I fell into the singularity. I was falling into the abyss. The beautiful thing I just saw made me feel fulfilled. It was a glimpse of the light of mankind, opposed to the world and nothing like the destructive light of the giant. Faint and small like an illusion, yet stronger than anything, this light was akin to a halo. Without any regret or hesitation, I would do the last thing I had to do. The destination was near. Only a few seconds were left. I began counting down. I don't really have much of an option, do I?
かの愛深きリア王の娘は哀れな老王を救おうとしたが、欺瞞と言葉の前に敗れ去った。コーディリアが願った正義が果たされることはなかった。今、その言葉を借りよう。この一瞬でも、一秒でも、目の前で悲劇を止めるために。Time shall afford, but brighted cunning eyes, who cover faults, at last shame and delights. Well,
Oh, dang.
may you prosper. Type, King Lear 5, run.
King Lear 5, let's go, baby. There was an immense power pulsating below, a feeling beyond the 5 named ones perceived the singularity as something akin to a star. It was the point linking this and the other side.
世界とやらを救おう!
Let's save the world and whatnot. Gosh, I like this ending, but at the same time, it's such a meme. It's such a meme. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I will stop the singularity. I will use this cursed power that denied advancement, change, and reality to face the fissure of the world. I extended my right hand, imagining myself grabbing hold of a burning star. I couldn't stop what I couldn't perceive, but since I touched the owl in the contact experiment, I was worthy of silencing this. Stop. This was beyond the whole world. It overflowed with heat that was too great to describe. Stop. My right hand didn't break the weight of the world. Stop. The pushed against the gears spinning out of control. This was the power that slowed down the world. As it lost speed, it lost vividness.
この悲劇に幕を引く.
Within my hand, the heat raged like a storm as though struggling against me one last time. I wouldn't have been surprised if my fingers were blown away. I grasped it tight. In my hand, I held the newest King Lear 5. All life had value. Even if they were lost without meaning or disappeared without even receiving a name, the light that existed then continued to exist even now. Even if it was forgotten forever, its actions would become footprints etched into the world, leading all those who followed. Thus, the power which turned a moment into eternity wasn't a power of stillness. This was a halo that sang the truth of the world of man, woven into the distant future. I stopped the world. The singularity became silent. I looked above and saw the giant. It tried to restore itself after Ray destroyed it, but losing its connection to the owl made it twist its body. Without new power flowing in, it couldn't maintain its shape. The half-destroyed giant's outline quickly began to crumble. I watched my victory become reality. I continued to fall at dozens of meters per second, and I didn't even hear the sound of the wind anymore. My senses were lost long ago. The battle until now, the extreme halo processing, the miraculous act of stopping the singularity, all that was a small price to pay. If my calculations were correct, even if Saku was here, she'd be a bit too exhausted to bring us both back to the surface. This was a one-way trip. Thanks to Ruri following us, I didn't even have to do any convincing. Would I crash after a second, or after a minute? Embraced by a fear like a dark night was about to take me. For reasons I didn't know, I felt something I haven't felt during these 7 years. I wanted to go to the surface, to the land under the stars.
生きるべき理由はないのにどうしてそうか成田真理にはまだやり残していることがあったそう思える以上私は最後の1秒まで
If I mustered my life, I could use my halo just once more to... My thought was cut short by the remains of the giant, the countless bits of light grabbing onto me.
我が気を
Suddenly, my vision changed. It was overwhelmed by light, up, down, left, right, as though the entire sky, stars were falling. I mean, this is not much of a time to use a cheat code,
崩れる巨人の
Narita.
光に飲まれたのか
Before it lost its hold on existence as an attempt to live on, the giant grabbed onto the closest thing, me, and tried to enter the depths. What I was seeing was the world through the eyes of the giant, or perhaps the eyes of Ruri, the circuit. It was a world distant to the current mankind.
つながるがいいオールの端末よ
Waves of power entered me, an emotionless systematic program. I was almost overwhelmed and crushed by it. My will and memories were almost washed away.
私にはなすべきことがある
I'd committed many a sin on my path to revenge, but what I was about to do was by no means an
接
atonement.
続を断たれた貴様はあと十数秒で消えるその時蓄えられた膨大な力は解き放たれるだろうこの地ごと吹き飛ばして余る力だが悲劇は終わる
I loathed and couldn't tolerate the unfairness of the world and the cruelty of
こ
fate.
の成田真理の全てをかけてなすべき復讐を
The giant was a terminal of the owl. HMIs were those who could connect to the owl, and halos were the powers that overwrote the owl. That was why I could do this.
終末よ去れ
As though processing the calculations for a halo, I sent the order to the giant's
人
functions.
の滅びはいつか自らの手で選び取るだろうそれは今ではない
Alright, we're taking life back into our own hands. An end isn't proper if it was absolute. When we wake up from our nightly slumber, a new morning begins, and we will once again start walking towards the rainbow in the distance. Dang, okay, so what happens? The curtain fell and the actors all left the stage. Only the final scene was left. Rings of light were drawn in the sky. Like the rainbow halos of angels, the soft lights, neither cold nor warm, were positioned like ripples as they shone. This was the place that was once called a garden. What kind of dreams did the boorish man who built the sanctuary see when looking at the small piece of paradise? The only ones who knew the answer were no longer here. Despite all the rubble and destruction around, several small flowers were still there. It seemed like the final miracle someone left on the way out.
ルリちょっと目を開けなさいルリ
Sako Otanashi yelled as she clung to the white dress. Hishiya, silently standing behind them, felt something and turned around.
まさか成田様
やはりここは地上か
Well, that's convenient. Before I knew it, I found myself on the surface. My memories ended where I pushed the giant back to the other side. I didn't know what happened afterwards.
成田よく一人で地上へ得意点は巨人は倒せたの
Saku turned back to me, tears in her eyes, but she didn't move from where she was.
全て終わった
じゃあ空の光は
成田様
With a curious look on her face as she approached me, but then took a step back and opened the path to Saku.
何をするの今動いたら
She must have heard my footsteps. Saku tried to stop her, but she, Ruri, pushed her aside and slowly stood up. She barely looked human. Despite that, she wrung out the last vestiges of her life to stand up, as though to show she wouldn't lie in front of her brother.
瑠璃様
あらお前も生きていたのねあ作り物に生きているのかなんて
Apparently, she only now noticed Hishia's presence. It was clear that she couldn't see properly anymore. It was hard to tell if she could even hear us. Second by second, Ruri's life was fading. The things that the giant destroyed were reduced to white light. In the same way, Ruri was losing her form, like flowers lost their petals in the wind.
巨人にやられたせいか。
私のリア王1でもまだ追いつかなかったよ。
She spoke not with anger or sadness, but with a faint smile. There were no means of stopping this end. It was a dream that no Halo could make a reality. However, while knowing full well that Ruri didn't have much time left, she showed no fear of the end. The fact made me both profoundly proud of her, as well as achingly sad. The end was near, and yet she was like this.
ヒシア、あなたは少しは役に立つから、お兄様のところを追い出されたらおっしゃいなさい。
はい、ルリ様。
Hey, don't be trying to steal my maid. Hishia, the girl raised to be a living gun, silently hung her head. This must have been the first time I saw her like
お
this.
兄様。さて。
I've been through many farewells like this. My and Hishia's lives were full of them. Hishia's sisters, our nameless allies, the innocents who died before us, the loathsome enemies. Some died by my hand, some I watched leave on their own. Others expired in different ways. None of these many goodbyes were as heartrending as this one.
復讐をするのなら、これが最後の。
何を言ってるの？
Ruri faced me with a calm expression, putting in her in stark contrast to Saku, who's aggressively gotten between us, teary-eyed. Several seconds of silence, my right hand was shaking, but not because of the pain all over my body. Without a sound, with movements my body had come to know well, I pulled out my Luger, my oath-sworn arm, and aimed it at Ruri's forehead. With the giant completely gone from this world, Ruri's death wouldn't initiate the end.
もういいでしょ。どれだけ憎んでいたって、これ以上は。
You know, this is how it always had to be.
憎んではいない。
どうして？
Shinri Narita's lust for revenge was ordering him not to let this evil
こ
be.
れは終わり損ねた舞台の続き。花園武史、桂木新山、夜店時の、帝黒船、帝大義。誰も彼もが舞台から降りた。
That's funny, he added Taigi in there now.
今夜はようやくの千秋楽。残っているのは私と瑠璃だけだ。
The pale, shining night sky reflected the one of my homeland. The small forest shrine had been burned, returning to ash. A sepia film was playing on without end. I'd been fighting for 7 years since then, for I was unable to stomach the unfairness of the world and the cruelty of fate.
瑠璃、お前はどこへ行きたかった？
前に教えてあげたでしょ。故郷の里、あの狭い鳥かご。いるのは屍ばかり。お父様も誰も彼も過去の残骸ばかり眺めて。
Without any shame, they were doing nothing but lamenting the past.
そんな中で生きたまま死んでいきたくなかったの。でもお父様も黒船たちも私をジャービル、向こう側への羅針盤たる唯一の完成品と呼んだ。箱に閉じ込めた。大切な宝石みたいに、大事な毒薬みたいに。
Ruri wasn't at fault for being born a monster. After all, she was the result of centuries of experimentation. People couldn't live on their own, so they huddled together, built society and bound each other in rules. If one was to shatter the shackles and try to fly, they would only be brought down. But who could stop the desire to walk as far as
お前
possible?
には選ぶことさえ許されなかったのだな。
Our father, Kurofune, and his dogs, the system, and even society itself denied Ruri's existence as a whole. She wasn't a person to them, but a crown to be donned by the king. That was why she tried to reach for the sky, even if it meant breaking everything around her. She was denying fate. That was Ruri Mikoto's revenge.
私もまた一匹の怪物だ。己の選んだルールに従ってしか生きられない。それが壊し、奪うことでも、今さら道は変えられん。 成田真理はお前の生き方を許せない。
She wished to fly. I wished for her to be human, and our mother prayed for her happiness. The prayers of mankind were cruel. They always put people to the test.
わがままなお兄様、それは私に腐っていけというのと同じよ。
Well, Ruri, you were supposed to be dead a long time ago, and I think it's time that you go back to being dead.
でも
I think that's what he wants.
許してあげる。
Hearing her say that in such a casual manner left me taken aback.
他の誰がダメと言っても、私がお兄様の人生を認めてあげる。その憎悪が夜明けに消える幻でも。
She wasn't denouncing or judging me. I was a man who gave in to the flame of hatred and trampled over his human heart to survive and return here, yet she faced me with a smile on her face. Basically, since she lived as she wanted, and in her eyes, it was fair that I did the same.
そうか。お前が私の罰か。
成田、待って。
Another hard choice, guys. You know, there's only one way this could end. I feel like this is just how it has to go. Because if Rory won't change, you know, can't have her staying in the world. Before Sokka could run up to me, I pulled the trigger. Stars were falling and a gunshot rang out through the night. It was akin to a single tear.
最後までわがままなお兄様。
Bullet from my oath-sworn arm pierced nobody, flying off into the distance.
私も好きにするよ。
Oh, is he gonna keep her alive? You know, this wouldn't be the first time he did that, because apparently he kept her alive when he was trying to shoot her before. Rory looked at her selfish brother with a half-exasperated, half-perplexed face. She then giggled as though she remembered something. For the first time since our reunion, she smiled with the innocence of a real
そ
angel.
んなもの、まだ捨てずに持っていたのね。
Renee didn't even have enough power to point, so I pulled the object off my chest and put it on my palm and extended it to her. A relic of faded days when all was still warm. It was a small gem young Rory had given her brother on his birthday. A piece of lapis lazuli she'd found at the river we often played
捨
at.
てなかったのは私ではないよ。
This small gem was what had protected me from Rory's all-destroying attack. The fact that this weak pebble wasn't broken, though, could only mean that Rory herself didn't want to toss it aside. Rory had once wished for me to be the way I was, and now she had acknowledged the past I'd accumulated. She must have regained it, the fragment of love she'd surely had during those long days. Days long gone.
といい、お兄様といい、そんな昔話を五章大事にして。
Yeah, what can we say? Humans are not easy to forget about the past, you know, because history repeats itself.
男とはそういうところがあるものだ。
For about a moment, I felt like those days had come back, and the memories of those times were giving me a severe headache. Or heartache. I don't know why I said headache. As sad as it was, the pain wasn't enough to make me cry anymore.
この旅は満足だったか。
素敵な空だった。自由になって見上げる星は美しかった。街の輝きを私は愛した。どこもかしこも夢のようで、この数日は生まれてから一番楽しかったわ。
I do love the CG of her, though. Very nice. It's a very fitting end. The girl's life was a dark one. She was first locked up by Mikidos and made a prisoner of the academy. Couldn't justify the sin of the tragedy she caused, but there must have been a more fitting, happier, different life she could have lived.
私もあの街角で買い物とかをしてみたかった。ああ、だからそんな気分を楽しませてくれたあの女にはほんの少しだけ感謝をしてもいい。
I do wish there was a route where Ruri had a little bit of a happier ending. I just don't think that was going to be possible, you know? Just because of the type of person she is. The girl wasn't able to make it as far as she wanted. Hope was a thing we believed in exactly because it was rarely fulfilled. It was a poison that the thing we called God had given mankind. However, the light of hope was exactly what drove us to walk farther and further on.
素敵。本当に素敵。
The memories of those 2 days were akin to a starry sky. She thought of the crowds walking through the dazzling city lights. They were shining to the point of making her envious, and she could watch them for hours. She felt no guilt in plucking their lives, but she thought if she'd chosen a different way, she might have seen a different light. It was so fun that she spread her arms and spun around. The edges of her dress were akin to wings in flight. Not much time was left. Her body wouldn't last. But she had no regrets. She was able to fly. That alone made these few days more satisfying than the years in the land of her birth, or the years she'd spent as Sleeping Beauty. Above, there was an angelic halo, as well as a rainbow leading to the eastern sky. It was beautiful, and in its end, there was surely...
見に行けばよかった。
Well, you know, there's just enemies beyond the sea, so... One last time, she felt a bit of regret.
私が行けるところまで私は行った。ここから先はそうね、お兄様が見てくればいい。
私がだと？
誰でもいいのよ。私は魂なんて信じないし、私が死んだ後のことなんてどうでもいい。でもせっかく歩いたことが何もかも消えてしまうのは。
My chest tightened. I had to do my best to keep my voice from shaking.
花は枯れるから咲き誇る。それでも散るのは悲しい。だから我々は託すのだろう。散った後に新たな種が実るように。己の歩みのもっと先へ誰かがたどり着いてくれることを祈りながら。
お母様がそうだったように、私がそうするように、お兄様がいつかするように。
Standing on this once-in-a-lifetime stage, Ruri spread her hands and spun once again. The girl that had it all from the start actually had nothing. She was a caged bird, captured by madmen and used to fulfill their desires, and now having broken free from this curse, she was flying as she
ま
wished.
るで子供みたいね。そんなにだらしなくないって。
何を言って。
My vision became uncertain as though I was becoming unable to hold what was welling up. The emotion that hadn't flowed once since Ruri died 7 years ago had returned. Was I sad, or was this something else? Uncertain of the answer, I felt a flood of tears go down my cheeks.
ルリ。
The last traces of her life disappeared. 'Gosh, that would be hard. It's like losing a sister for the second time. The dam had burst, and I raised my voice like a baby. Tears were flooding forth for the first time in 7 years. Within the desolate ruins, she saw off her sworn enemy and embraced the man who was crying without end. The proud man who never showed any weakness was now doing nothing but crying for his sister. Put strength into her embrace, hoping that it would give him peace, however briefly. Her heart was heavy and she could say nothing, Should she have laughed at her foe's demise or cursed that she was gone? Saku couldn't tell. She felt as though she'd been left behind by a feather in the wind, and though this was the end of someone she hated, she couldn't stop crying. Eventually, the sobbing stopped.
もういいの？
ありがとう。恥ずかしいところを見せてしまったな。ついでというわけではないが、あと一つだけ頼んでもいいだろうか。
いいわよ。どうぞ。
この先、君は多くの苦難に遭うだろう。瑠璃が黄金であったように、君はこの世界にとって最も貴重な宝石の一つになった。その苦難に、絶望に負けることなく進めたのなら、いつか教えてくれないか。瑠璃と私の行けなかった先の光景がどんなものだったのか。
え？成田？
He went limp in her arms. At the mercy of gravity, he wasn't moving at all. It was silly to ask what was happening. She knew Narita was beyond injured. It was a mystery why he was even alive. Saku rushed to aid him, but a hand on her shoulder stopped her. It was Hishia. The maid gave her shoulder to Narita, and before Saku asked what she was planning, Hishia dragged him next to Ruri. Ruri's remains weren't actually there. They were only faint remnants of which Hishia put Narita's right hand.
長い。本当に長い旅でした。
Wait, there's no way. We're gonna have Narita die in the ending? Her heart ached, but she couldn't help but feel that the man seemed happy, as though standing before a vast meadow. The man who didn't need to stand back up ever again looked like a child in a peaceful sleep. After ending the battle that had lasted 7 years, he'd finally found peace. I mean, like, it makes sense, but really?
見てください、おとなし様。お二人はやっとただの兄弟に戻られたんですね。
Her gentle voice tarnished with the wind, or vanished with the wind. The night was so silent that he could almost hear the shooting stars. Wow, okay. I did not expect Narita to just die in the end. I mean, it's fine though. He wasn't like killed or anything. He just passed away, right? I suppose he kind of got his revenge, you know? He kind of finished everything he set out to do. Huh. Well, this was quite the ending, guys. I think there's something past this. At least there should be. But that's not the end. Okay, we skipped the credits, and because I want to see what's past the credits. There's going to be an after credits scene, I know. There has to be. Okay, good. I was like, there's no way they're ending it like that. Like, no way. Seasons passed. The stormy spring and dazzling summer ended before anyone realized it. Busy days felt surprisingly short, and this was one such day at the end of summer. They'd all agreed to go out today, and Tamao Akihito and Eru Takazaki were waiting for the rest at the main gate of the academy.
激しい街大好きから早4ヶ月。明日から新学期とは、この夏休みはイベントらしいイベントもできませんでした。主に玉緒のせいで。
Oh, what a shame.
よくわかんねえけど、お前の言ってることは絶対間違ってる。
They were at the bus terminal linking Okushima and the academy. It was the last stop, and since there was no residential buildings nearby, you could say it was meant exclusively for this place. 15 minutes were left until the time they agreed on. Because of Saku's training and her own hobbies, Eru was accustomed to being early, but Tamao tended to do everything at the last moment, so being here at this time was Far too early for her. They were here, messing around with each other while they waited for the rest of the girls. The surrounding mountains were covered by green that would soon with the coming of autumn. The scars from the owl incident were deep. The students were mostly unharmed, but the academy had lost most of its core individuals as well as its research facilities. The damage was especially great around the plant where the giant appeared. The area looked nothing like it was. Most importantly,
あくびですか、玉尾。
the light reflected off the glass school building was dazzling. The edges of Tamao's eyes exposed to this were slightly wet.
今日は集合が早かったから寝不足なんだ。つうかあいつらまだ来やがらないのかよ。
Mal looked away and chuckled at her own changes. A whole 3 months had passed, but this still occasionally happened, catching her off guard. Before she'd have never thought that she could grieve over something.
玉緒ちゃん、エルちゃん、お待たせ。
Aw, Arrow, you look so cute, so small. Suddenly, a girl, breathing raggedly, clung to Arrow from behind. Arrow let out a sound like a cat being stepped on and began to struggle.
そらこ、抱きつかないでください。しがみつかないでください。重いです。
Oh, that's great.
ちょっと撫でるだけだから、ちょっとだけだから。
玉をなんとかしてください。そらこは以前よりわがまま度が上がりました。こんな成長は最悪です。
The blonde girl clinging to Arrow with Soriko Katsuragi.
お二人ともおとなしく待っていられませんの？私たちしかいないと言っても気構えというものがですね。
Dang, it's kind of sad having Mitori here, but knowing, like, Narita's not. Like, you know, we got what we lost, but then we ended up losing something else instead. Following Soriko, Mitori Kabutoyama gracefully walked up to the group, calmly handling her fan. Side by side, Soriko and Mitori looked like a white lily and a traditional sakura tree, making the bus stop far more gaudy.
俺負けてないからな。
エルを助けもしないで生まれついての負け犬が何を言ってるんですか。
You baby
思い返
loser.
せば成田に負けてから。
Yeah, to be fair, Tamao did lose quite a bit. Arrow quickly shut her babbling mouth. She then escaped Soriko's grip and with a serious expression bowed her head to her. That was quite a rarity for this girl.
すみません。そらこの気持ちも考えずに成田の名前を。
その、別に気にしなくていいよ。
An awkward atmosphere spread among them, and they fell silent. It was as though they were all dealing with a troubling problem in a test.
検査の結果出たんだろ。
Now tried to change the subject to disperse the awkwardness, but she ended up asking something related.
この間新しくスクールに来られた先生にも調べてもらいましたが、私も桂木さんも健康そのもので後遺症も何もないそうです。
You know, we don't want no more onslaught syndrome, okay? During the owl incident, Soriko and Mitori suffered severe injuries. Honestly, they were as good as dead. They were found after it was all over, buried under a rubble of a school building reduced to but a frame.
どうして生きていたのか、今でもよくわからないんだ。
Soriko put her hands as though praying and looked at her memories. They were fragmented, making everything seem vague.
私も同じような声を聞いたように思います。
奇跡という名のハッピーエンドです。仲間を思う愛の、つまりはエルの力なのです。愛の前には死んだ戦士が生き返るのはもはや当然。クラウン、裏切り者を除くに同じ技が二度通じないのと同じくらい確かなことで。
奇跡で型がつけば世の中苦労しねえっつうの。
あの声、よく知っている気が。
No one there decided to dig any deeper into this, for they all believed the same thing. They thought that the voice that saved Soriko and Mitori belonged to him. The salvaged records made it obvious that neither modern medicine nor any recorded halo could save them. But on that night, that moment when he came closer to the owl than anyone else, he might have received the ability to bring forth a miracle impossible for mankind's halos. As they fell silent in thought, the final person
今日
arrived.
は早いのね。全員揃っているなんて。
Oh, that's sweet. Sako Utsunashi looked over the faces of her friends. With the vivid summary background, they looked like priceless gems. Normally, they would go right away. However, today Soriko had gathered her courage.
サク、バスが来るまでまだ時間があるから。
どうしたの？改まって。
3ヶ月前、あの夜、成田くんたちはどうなったの？
After the incident, both Naruto and Hishiya vanished. She didn't really know what happened to Ruri either. Saku alone saw it, but she didn't say much about it. Because of that, most of it was a mystery for Soriko and the rest of the girls here. Everything was calming down, but they didn't feel right, like the final piece of a puzzle was missing.
そうですわ。曖昧なままは性に合いません。今日こそはっきり教えていただきますわ。あなたたち。
それが悲劇でも喜劇でもちゃんと幕は下ろさないと。でないと次が始められないから。
I mean, I think it is fair that everyone knows what happened, even if vaguely. Indeed, closure was something to be given, not something to wait for. Saku felt that her friend had grown, making her smile.
空子、みとり。
空子もみとりもやめてください。
エル、あなた。そっか。あなただって成長しているものね。
いいですか？サクはこう言いたいのです。成田は私たちの胸の中で永遠に生きていると。そして青空に笑顔ドーン。
And then there's Arrow.
ちょっと待ちなさい、エル。
いや、お前、勝手に殺すなよ。
You know, I didn't believe for a minute that some people were saying that Arrow would, like, become one of your favorite characters. I'm like, yeah, Arrow is a pretty funny girl. I do like her in that regard.
そうですわよ。高崎さんといえど不謹慎すぎます。
こんな時に悪ふざけしやがるその口、言わしてやろうか？
んだと？四天王の裏切り者の分際で貴様は反逆者の烙印を背負って今ここで死ぬのだ。
You shall die here and now.
もう足洗ったんだよ、俺は。
It was the end of summer, yet these two were making more noise than cicadas. The sight made Saku chuckle.
エルちゃん、タマオちゃん、少し黙って。
まさか空子が怒った？
おとなしさん、どうされたんです？今、あいつと初めて会った時のこと思い出してたんだ。
I know,
初対面からとんでもなかったなって。
it's like, what are all the girls gonna do now that they don't have someone sexually harassing them all the time?
テロリストに襲われたサクを助けた話ですか？別に成田が現れなくてもそんな連中サクなら一撃でした。
Humbled by the first talking to Soraka ever gave them, Arrow and Smao took refuge behind Saku.
彼はそんなことを知らなかったし、私と時の先生を見捨てて立ち去りもしなかった。
おかしなやつでした。むしろおかしいやつでした。つまり変態。おかしすぎて人形なのを忘れてしまうぐらいには。
ただのバカだよ。
That's probably true too.
誰よりも自分の手でやらなくちゃいけないことがあったのに、誰よりも余計なことに首突っ込む変人だった。ま、当てられてバカになったやつもいるけどな。
でも成田くんがそういう人じゃなかったら僕たちは誰もここにいなかったと思う。
本当に嵐のような方でしたわ。良きものも悪しきものもすべて壊して凝り固まったよどみを隠されていたものまで、私たちのことは世界を救うついでだったのかもしれませんが。
成田の場合、世界のことは父を救うついでです。絶対に間違いなく。
You know, Arrow, I think you're right. I think that's probably what was on Naruto's mind. I know they didn't say anything. They actually kept the ending serious, which I was glad. Kind of. But, yeah, that's probably it. She knows Naruto pretty well. The others laughed in agreement.
両方ともついでだったのよ。
Saku covered her eyes from the sun and looked up at the sky.
自分に恥じない道を決めて進んだだけ。そして最後まで諦めずに歩み続けた。
Oh my gosh, I haven't seen that freaking CG in a long time. I remember watching that and I was like, wow, you know, this game's weird. You know, this guy's very perverted. And then now here we are. It's like, gosh, that's bringing back some memories. Whew. I'm just taking a moment. I never thought I would like this game as much as I did, you know? Storm-like transfer student who arrived on that spring day was proud, selfish, idiotic, and perverted. Though gentle, he gave into the flame of revenge. Though loving the future, he let the illusions of the past bind him. He valued change, but couldn't stomach the world that had transformed. He became an avenger as a result.
彼の願いは果たされなかったけど、成し遂げたことはあるわ。
Hirofune Mikado had built the academy atop the graves of the Mikados. It had a bright exterior, but it was hiding something Saku and the others couldn't see. Naruto had brought down the curtain on what the academy used to be. Along with that, he destroyed the invisible cage and arrogance that they themselves held together, preventing those things from backfiring on them in the future.
さあ、振り返るのはここまで。花の命は短いの。一時だって立ち止まってなんていられない。今日は全員揃って街へ買い物に出かけるわよ。
Dang, no fair, I want to go shopping with them. Saku forcefully ended the talk and energetically extended her right hand into the sky. Everything had an end. That was programmed from the start, and though you could postpone it, you couldn't avoid it. There's no point in looking back at the past and lamenting it. Whether you chose to think of the past or forget it, the choice would be made for the sake of the future. That was why, when thinking of him, it was best to feel nothing but gratitude and joy that he saved them.
みんなで街へ買い物になんて普通の女の子みたいだね。
I know. It feels kind of, you know, like a bummer that we didn't get to do this before, right? We were just kind of stuck at the school or like saving people or killing people.
普通じゃないことを悩む前に、私たちはもっと普通の楽しみ方を学ぶ努力をすべきだと思うわ。
The paradise would end someday. How long would they be able to walk through it together? They would eventually go down their own separate paths, no doubt. They all knew this, yet they chose to hope that this dream would continue forever. After all, the one who'd granted them these miraculous days must have wanted the girls to enjoy them to the fullest before they all took flight. Anyways, a lot happened, but we were able to see the end of this year's summer. The bus was here, so we began approaching it. Soriko walked calmly. Mitori's steps were elegant. Tamao's stride was wild. Ero was trotting after them, while I was behind them all. Shonen Narita had returned to enact his revenge, but his hands, despite meaning to take, had left behind so many things. Any actions could have meaning. But they would become footprints that would be followed by those who came after. We were here because of him, after all, and someone would eventually inherit the path we walked as well.
あなたみたいに歩けるかな。
Sako Utanashi's path was far from over. I would weave my story for decades more. I didn't know how far I would go, but I would hold my head high and try to make it as far as possible. I would catch up and pass him so I could fulfill the promise we made. I wonder if she's going to keep the academy going.
空を目指して羽ばたいた鳥の願いは叶わなかったけれど、その祈りは今も私の中につながっている。
Well, there we go. I think that's the end, unless they have something else they're going to show. But oh, they have an epilogue. Sweet. Let's do it. Ooh, is this going to talk about that old man? Like, they never explained that. They never really showed him. You passed the storm, that's a hell of a feat for someone like you, said the old man. Honestly, though, this is a wasteland with various armed and warring factions. Passing through it in normal weather was impossible. This country had been in a civil war for 5 years. It started when a group of people were inspired by a revolution in a neighboring country to stand against the military regime. With a political disturbance, guns began flowing in, and factions all over the country, fighting for various causes, quickly turned into the country into a hellscape. World superpowers as well as the neighboring countries got involved, as well some funding certain factions, some secretly dispatching their own forces. Well, everyone was doing whatever. You couldn't find a peaceful patch of land here, and the flames of war were constantly generating new piles of rubble and corpses. The wasteland I passed during last night's storm was one such place. If I was by myself, I could just use my tricks, but if I had to protect some refugees that were heading to the border to escape war, I had to do something a little absurd.
自分の名前ですか？
Eru? The refugee children I'd led to the ruined oasis town tugged at my sleeve and asked for my
エ
name.
ルです。たかざき。
I spelled it out to make it easy for the locals to hear. Some time had passed since I left the academy. It had been about a year since the owl incident. Apparently I just couldn't tolerate it. We had the happy end-like closure, but only Tamao and Sorko would be okay with a conclusion that half-baked. I wasn't having it, though. After over a year of investigation, I got a hint of the location. That was more like a rumor. Unable to hold myself, I rushed out of the academy and chased after it.
本当ですか？やたら態度のでかい日本人？メイドを連れた？もしかして今度こそ大当たりですか？
Wait, what? I myself was aware that I was being absurd. I didn't even discuss it with Sokka before doing this. Did I always have the energy to do things like this? Where was all this time? You think I was invested in him? I don't know why I can't talk. You think I was invested in him? Of course I wasn't. Though the fact of the matter was that I was here looking for that colossal idiot. I followed him, lost trace of him, and passed by him many times now, yet I continued to follow the faint trail to make it this far.
ありがとうございました。早速行ってみることにします。皆さんとはここでお別れですね。ここから国境までは大丈夫だと思いますが。
I was in a wasteland I couldn't even imagine back when I was at the academy, saying goodbye to ragged-looking children who still had fire in their eyes, like true humans should. Now alone I headed to where they pointed me to. Another day, another battle between fellow mankind. By that I didn't mean that they were as foolish as they were millennia ago. Mankind were creatures that culled the few for the sake of the many, but over the centuries the amount of those who had to be culled had become smaller. On the way we created things like organizations, rules, systems, countries. We weren't selfless enough to remain unchanged for long. Though at a pace so slow that a single life wasn't enough to sense it over the past centuries, the standard of living and infant mortality rates had changed beyond recognition. There would eventually come a time when even this barren wasteland would have flowers blooming over it.
この分だと明日にはつけそうですね。
Dang, she looks a little bit older. I couldn't tolerate it. Tolerate what? The fact that Narita just went and destroyed the academy like that. I couldn't rest easy until I poured out my complaints on him and punched him a couple dozen times. Yeah, I knew it was stupid to chase after someone in a wasteland for such a stupid reason. Still, that was what I wanted to do once I found out where he was, so there was no helping it. For Eru Takazaki, that was the very first thing she had truly decided for
世界を
herself.
諦めるなんてバカのすることです。
I could die today, or maybe everything would end in 5 minutes. What of it? The path would lead somewhere as long as you kept on walking. What was important was to keep on moving forward while believing in what you thought was right and not breaking in the face of hardship. That had to be it. That had to be the greatest form of revenge against this cruel, beautiful world. So, is Eru and Narita canon now?
今日はいい風が吹く予感がするのだよ。
And this guy's still alive. Like, what the frick? He reincarnated himself.
朝から空へ向かって決め顔は結構ですが、そろそろ出発の時間になります。邪魔にならないようご準備を。
今日の相手は時間にうるさい。私も急ぐとしよう。
さあ、今度こそ追いついてぶん殴ってやりましょう。一体どんな顔をしやがるでしょうか。
Okay, well, I like this little epilogue. I like this a lot. That was cute. The end of the rainbow, the edge of the ocean. It is human nature to covet something we've never seen before. There is no end to this path. Meeting, fighting, loving, betraying. While doing what is human, we keep on walking ever forward into the distance. Ah, Arrow. She tells him not to stop the car, but then she wants to get her revenge, so she's got to catch up to him. As I ran, breathing raggedly, a silhouette in the stopped car smiled in amusement before extending his hand and saying a certain catchphrase.
Hello, ready?
There it is, guys. Hello, lady. We had to play through the entire game to hear it. Well, that was sweet. That was really sweet. I like that a lot. That made up for some of the kind of meh parts of the plot as far as the true route goes. I like that. I mean, I don't understand how he came back alive. Maybe he just was never dead. I don't know. Oh, dang, look at that. Look at that. Oh, that's awesome. I love it. That was great. I mean, there was definitely parts of the ending I did not like. Like, I don't really care about the whole owl thing. I feel like that just... I don't know. It just didn't really fit in there for me. But I liked how Ruri got a little bit of a redemption. Just a little bit. I wouldn't say it was a full redemption. I wouldn't say I, like, totally forgiven her. But, you know, you do have to recognize, like, hey, she was kind of screwed up from the start. And the circumstances kind of led her to be screwed up a little bit. But I liked a lot of the CGs. Like, it felt like they crammed a lot in at the last part. And it felt like it flowed pretty decently. Like I said, I didn't really care about the owl, but the execution of how they did it, I guess, was fine. I definitely like this ending better than Saku's. I would say that. I liked being able to see all the girls there, and I liked having Mitori be alive. That was great. I liked the Halo superiors. I think that was cool. I like how they added this like kind of extra element, because I was like, how in the world are they gonna make this any different than Saku's route? Like, they already pulled out all the stops, so having the Halo superiors and then Naruto having King Lear 5 really like put a different twist in the story. So that was nice, even though it was kind of convenient, I'll say. Lots of stuff that's convenient in the story, I'll say that. But, you know, I really enjoyed this game a lot more than I thought I would. There's definitely parts that dragged on a little bit for me. I definitely felt like the start of the game, I had like, I don't know, it felt like things were like flowing at just like the right pace. Like the common route was really good. I liked the flow. And then in some of the routes, it kind of like dragged on a little bit. And I was like, bruh, are we really doing this? Are we really having this story? And then some of the routes like kind of touched on the same things over and over again, which is cool, but you know, I want the new stuff. It felt like I had to play through a lot of the game before I got like information about like Narita's Halo and things like that, and all the other girls' Halos. just because like they're like, oh, we have a rule at the school, we don't say that. And then later in the story, it feels like they just kind of willy-nilly give out that information, like it doesn't matter. Trying to think, was there anything they didn't solve? They didn't show me the old man that like trained Narita. They didn't really touch on him ever. I would have liked to see something about him. Let's see. I would have liked more Soriko in the story. Like, just not like crazy moments with her, but just like learning more about her, I guess, her power. Just because I feel like they touched on it, and I'm having trouble just remembering what it was. Like, I kind of vaguely do, but I wish they would have explained that maybe a little bit more in detail. Let's see. I don't know. I would have liked a different ending for Ruri. I would have liked a part where she could have been like a normal girl. Or they could have like redeemed her and saved her in a way, and kept her alive. I understand like she did all these horrible things, so that probably wouldn't be an option, but I would have liked an ending where that could have been one. I would have liked a Tokino route. I heard that there kind of is a Tokino ending in one of the bad routes, so I'm going to play those. I'm going to play probably all the bad routes of the common route. And then I'm going to play all the Parachumen shows. I want to watch all those in order. So I'm going to be making videos on that. If there's any other content in the game that I could make a video on that you think that I should react to, make sure to let me know. Or else I think it's only those two. I'm definitely going to watch those. I think those will be funny. But yeah, I mean, we're done with Hello Lady. And right now I'm playing Cafe Stella and the Reaper's Butterflies. That game's been good, but it's obviously very different from this. Not quite the same. It doesn't really quite fill that hole. But I'm looking into some other games I might start playing. I am going on vacation here in the next week, so I'll probably not start it till after that if you're watching this as I air it. But yeah, lots of exciting stuff. Really enjoyed this game. Hello Lady. It was great. Obviously there was lots of things I didn't like about it, but for the most part I really only have positive things to say. And then I'm gonna hopefully keep it on a positive note, because I really enjoyed this game. It was really good. And really long. I don't think I've really played a game this long in a long time. Like, I don't know if Steins Gate is longer than this. That's probably the longest game I've played. Like Steins Gate or Danganronpa V3. I think that one's pretty long too. But gosh. Crazy. I can't believe I got through it. I'm really surprised, and I'm kind of impressed with myself. I'm not really one that's good about finishing things sometimes. At least when I'm recording it. You know, that's a hard feat, right? But anyways, guys, I'm going to stop talking. I think I'm just going to leave it at that. You know, that was Hello Lady. I'll be playing a little bit more Hello Lady, just so I can finish some of the other content. But, you know, that was the main story. That was Superior Entelechia. And for the most part, it was great. I'll say that. I will give it a passing grade. I think it was nice. It obviously had its downsides, but what doesn't, right? So, anyways, guys, I will be leaving you there. I hope you enjoyed the game. If you've watched me play through the whole thing, thank you very much. Like, that's crazy. Like, this was so long. So if anybody followed me through the whole thing, like, thank you. Like, I really appreciate it. I'm glad you followed me. And, I mean, I hope you enjoyed my reactions to things. I mean, there was lots of crazy plot twists, so I will see you guys next time.